two organizations, you have taken up this topic of India's China challenge and from Atma Raksha to Atma Nirbhar. While most of us are generally from a particular ideological background, the title of the topic, India's China challenge, sounds very normal to all of us. Because we have seen the history, we have read about the history. But India, having emerged as a very confident and strong nation, we may have to now start thinking about this issue in a slightly different connotation. That is, India-China challenge, India-China relations and contemporary challenges. When you are weak or perceived yourself to be weak, you saw China or any other country for that matter, you see somebody else as a challenge. When you are a capable person, when you are a capable nation, your whole approach to that issue should change. It should undergo a mental transformation. Although there is nothing wrong in the title per se, I would like to approach this topic from the perspective of India-China relations. What are the challenges? How should the two countries look at those challenges? How, as we Indians, how we should look at them, and what's going to be the road ahead for this relationship? Now, why I am talking about it as a relationship is because we are neighbors. Now, God sat down to create the universe. He created America first. He gave a lot of wealth, a lot of prosperity to America. Then he created Europe, gave a lot of intelligence to people, lot of skilled businessmanship. Then he created Africa, gave them a lot of natural resources, rivers, forests, hills, minerals, animals. Then he created Asia, gave hard-working people, valiant people, ferocious people. Finally, he started creating India. Because India, for God, is his own country. What he did was, whatever he gave to different individual countries, he gave all of them to India. He gave prosperity to India, he gave intelligence to India, he gave hardworking and ferociousness to Indian people, he gave a lot of natural wealth. So he was happy finally creating India and creating the universe. By that time, Naradji arrived. Now we all know that Naradji doesn't come empty-handed. Then he came immediately with a question, Bhagwan, what have you done? Bhagwan said, what have I done? I have created the universe and I have created India. Naradji said, look, what would history write about you? History will say, God was partial to India. Because he gave only one thing to America, one thing to Europe, but everything to India. Is it fair for God to be described as a partial entity? God now was in a dilemma. He did not realize that, there would be consequences of his actions. So he said, look, I have done what I felt like doing. Now you should tell us, because Naradji has this special quality. He will have the problems, but also he will have the solutions. So God said, okay, now tell me what should I do? I can't take it back. Whatever I gave to India, I gave it. That's all. I can't take it back. So Naradji said, all right, I can understand. You have a lot of love for India. It cannot be taken back, whatever you gave. Do one thing, create one Pakistan on one side and one China on the other side. So barabar ho jayega. Whatever you give for that, compensation. So we have two neighbors who have a lot of impact on India's rise, India's growth, and India's development. Will be alike. In English there is this saying, you can't choose your parents. You are not the choosers of your parents. You are born in a family. Similarly, you can't choose your neighbors. They are there. What we have to probably understand is, we, like in our own personal lives, in our own households, if there is a neighbor, he may not be of your liking, but you will slowly learn to live with that neighbor. In this case also, we must learn to live with our neighbors. We have many neighbors, but these two neighbors stand out because of various historical and political reasons. The real question for us in India is, in last 7 decades of our independence, of course, as far as Pakistan is concerned, we have understood that country. We know how to deal with that country. How to build relationships or not build relationships. You must understand that not talking is also a part of diplomacy. Many times, our opposition, our friends will ask us, you are not talking to Pakistan, no bilateral talks. What is this? Not talking is also a part of diplomacy. Just as talking is a part. So we have understood how to deal with one neighbor, Pakistan. The question is, how much have we understood the other neighbor, namely China? The important question today for us to ask ourselves is, have we understood how to deal with this other northern neighbor? If you look at the history in the last 7 decades, we tried to befriend China in the initial 10 years of our independence when Prime Minister Nehru was there. Zhou Enlai came to Delhi in 1954. We signed on the Panchashila. Then they both, in that ceremony at the Lal Killa, they had this occasion of releasing pigeons as a symbol of commitment to peace. Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai slogan we gave. But 5-6 years down the line, we had a very bad war between our two countries. It resulted in a humiliating defeat to India. It left a major scar on the psyche of India. Largely, countries started looking at China as an enemy. And from that war, for many years, at least for first 17 years, we did not have any official bilateral relationship with that country. Today, we are not talking with Pakistan, but this is only last a year and a half to 2 years time. It happened earlier also when Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister, between 2008 Bombay attack and end of 2009. For 1 full year, we did not talk with each other. Those were the instances on India-Pakistan side, in India-Pakistan relationship. Whereas in case of China, after the 1962 war, we did not have any relationship with that country until 1979. It was only after a Janata Party government came to power in Delhi in 1977 that efforts were made to restore the bilateral relationship. Vajpayee ji was the first Indian foreign minister to visit China in 1979. In 1988, our then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi became the first Indian Prime Minister to visit China after the 62 war, from 62 to 88, the 26-year period, we did not have any big relationship with that country. But subsequently, we two countries have developed certain strong bilateral relationship. And remember, this bilateral relationship, until a few years ago, used to be the economically biggest bilateral relationship for India. Of course, now America has overtaken India. This India-America relationship in its trade relationship, economic relationship has overtaken India-China relationship. Otherwise, China-India relationship used to be the largest relationship. When we talk about China, you must remember that we have built a strong bilateral relationship over the years. Now, in that context, we have to look at the challenge that emanates from our neighbor to this relationship, to this India-China relationship. It is twofold. One is a security challenge. Largely because we did not have a mutually agreed to demarcation of the LAC. Remember, when we use these statements, we have to be careful. Congress leadership always used to say, right up to Manmohan Singh in 2013, they used to say that, you see, we did not have a mutually agreed LAC. We did have our LAC, line of actual control, which the Chinese side persistently refuses to accept. Never say that we did not have a demarcated LAC. Alright, demarcated means on the ground we have not demarcated it. You have a clear idea of what your LAC is, line of actual control is. The challenge is that the other side refuses to accept it. The moment you say that, no, what can we do? There is no properly demarcated LAC, then you are actually giving a handle to your other side, your neighbor, to happily violate it. We have an understanding of an LAC, which we tried to tell China to agree to in 1993 when Prime Minister Narasimha Rao visited Beijing. The first major agreement after 1962 war between the two countries happened in 1993. It is called Peace and Tranquility Agreement. At that time, Prime Minister Narasimha Rao tried to tell the Chinese side that, you see, this is the LAC that we consider. Whatever LAC we consider today. Can we now agree that this is the existing line of actual control? Can we both say that? The Chinese side said, look, you may think that that is your LAC. We are not going to agree. So that word existing LAC, they refused to agree for that. So the result is, we have a perception about line of actual control, but the Chinese side, almost on a regular basis, violates that line. So between our two countries, when I talk about security challenge, the main challenge emanates along this LAC, line of actual control. As I said, after 1962, we have not had any major wars. Only major conflict that occurred between our two countries, India and China, was in 1967 in North Sikkim. Again, along the LAC, when our army was erecting a fence along the LAC, the Chinese side came and said, no, we don't agree with your LAC. So there was a scuffle. In that scuffle, according to official records, more than 350 Chinese soldiers were killed and about 70-80 Indian soldiers also were martyred. This was in 67. After that, the next instance of any casualties occurring between our two countries was in 2020. The incident that happened in May this year. What does it indicate? If you see what happens along India-Pakistan border, not a week passes without you reading about some violation, some cross-border firing, some soldier dying, some this incident, this incident. But how come on India-China border there is never any conflict? Why do we not read anything about it? Please remember, there is an important reason. That reason is what today makes Prime Minister Modi's government stand out. The reason is, in fact, there are two reasons I would say. One reason was, after 1980, after Deng Xiaoping became the leader, supreme leader of the Chinese Communist Party in China, he became the supreme leader in 1978. 1976, Chairman Mao died. It took 2 years for Deng Xiaoping to consolidate his position. He became the supreme leader in 1978. He introduced a new tactic. You know, in China, like in India, we had our Chanakya, the greatest strategist, who authored Arthashastra and all that. In China, there used to be a scholar by name Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu is again a 2000-year-old personality, the 3rd century BC. He had authored a book called The Art of War, Yuddha Ki Kala. In that he gives a number of, sutras or suggestions or principles as to how a war should be fought. One of the very interesting principles or sutras or advices that Sun Tzu gives is that the war should be won without ever waging any battles. You have to win without waging a battle. This is a technique that China employed after 1980s. What they started doing was slowly but steadily encroaching upon Indian territory. They kept on doing it. You know, in biology, in plant sciences and all, you know that there will be insects which nibble up the corners of the leaves. You know, these leaves are eaten up in the corners. It's nibbling case go. The Chinese side, the Chinese Red Army started nibbling up India's borders. What we used to do in response was to negotiate with them. After 65 conflict, as I said, there was never any armed conflict. They did not fight with you with guns and firing and across the border conflict and all that. But what they would do is quietly encroach into your territory. India, China, this LAC has a peculiarity. Most of it is Himalayan. Why most of it? Entire thing is Himalayan. So in the Himalayan terrain, during the winters, you cannot actually sit on the top, at the farthermost point of your border. It's very difficult. So you climb back, you come back to a safer place. So sometimes you come back 20 kilometers and settle down in your camp. Once winters end, in March again you climb up, you go to your point, border point. What Chinese used to do was, when you come back, they would quietly come and occupy. And when winters ended, you see them there. One such major incident happened in 1986. In Arunachal Pradesh, Sundorangchu Valley. That was the first major violation of our border. The Chinese came inside our territory 20 kilometers. and simply settle down. Normally, summers we used to be at one point in the valley, at the farthermost point. In winters we used to come back. We came back when summers of 87 came. We noticed that all our areas, the Chinese have come in and they pitched their tents and they settled down there. Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister. No idea what to do with that situation. General Sundarji was the chief at that time of our armed forces. Sundarji took his own decision and airlifted our battalions to Tawang and put them up right in front of the Chinese. But you can lift your army there, but you cannot wage a war until or unless government decides. So the result was, in 1987, our forces went and stood in front of the Chinese forces who were actually inside our territory. They stood there, you know for how long? 6 years. In between 1987 and 93, in between, Rajiv Gandhi went to China. I mentioned to you, first Prime Ministerial visit was in 1988, Rajiv Gandhi. Rajiv Gandhi, when he went, the decision that was taken was that he will go to China, he will negotiate with China, but he will freeze border issue. That means he will not talk about the border issue. You are standing opposite to each other, which in the army parlance is called eyeball to eyeball. You are standing there, your leader goes there, decides, no, uske baare mein baat nahi karenge. Because we did not know how to address this challenge. If they are fighting, okay, we will fight. But they are not fighting. And if you say that it is my territory, they will say, no, aapka kaise territory hai? We never agreed to your LAC. What we thought was these violations need to be addressed through bilateral dialogues. So in 1993, first time, Narasimha Rao. So when finally Chinese said, all right, we will agree, we won't agree that what you are saying as LAC, existing word, we don't agree. But you have your LAC, I have my LAC. But as far as Sundaramchu is concerned, we will also go back, but you also have to go back. And we agreed. First major agreement, which is touted as a great victory for India. If you read history, they will tell you Peace and Tranquility Agreement of 1993 was a major agreement, successful agreement between the two countries. What is the success? They came into your house, you went and challenged them. They said, all right, मैं भी पीछे जाता हूं, तुम भी पीछे जाओ. भाई मेरा घर है, मैं पीछे क्यों जाऊं? But that is the tactic of encroaching upon our territory. Friends, this continued. When this continued, we went on making agreement after agreement. After 93, we made another agreement in 96. Another in 2005. Another in 2012. And one fifth agreement in 2013. In 2005, we agreed that now that these violations are happening, it is possible that one day your army and our army will be again standing in front of each other. What is the guarantee? Kuch jagda ho jaye to fire kar diya to. So agreement was made that we will not carry any weapons. The security forces would go for patrolling of the borders with sticks in their hands. This was the agreement made. And today, when that incident happened at Galwan Valley, the question raised was, why did our army not carry the weapons? India has a great intellectual politician these days, Mr. Rahul Gandhi. He asked this question. But you should have read, it was the agreement made by his own government in 2005 that no, armies won't carry weapons. This is how we were dealing with India-China LAC. That is why you don't find any conflict happening. The second issue was an unstated policy on Indian side used to be that when you are patrolling, suppose you bump into a Chinese patrol, don't confront, just U-turn and come back. We would never confront them. If you don't confront them, no conflict. What we claim as peace was actually a piece of the graveyard. In the graveyard, it's always silence. What happened after Prime Minister Modi took over was that we decided that, okay, we don't want any conflict. We are not warmongers. We want peace. So we are also keen that all our bilateral problems should be resolved through dialogue. But we also said, but on the ground, we will stand firm to protect India's territorial interests. So 2017 was the first occasion, 2014 also was the first occasion when President Xi Jinping was in India. That was the very same moment when Chinese had encroached into our territory in Ladakh. So Prime Minister Modi had to take it up directly with President Xi Jinping that we won't accept. If India and China have to continue with good neighborly relations, this business of encroachment into our territory should stop. After Xi Jinping went back, whatever happened on their side, the Chinese had withdrawn. In 2017, they tried to do a similar kind of big mischief at a place called Doklam, the tri-junction between India, Bhutan and China and Tibet in Sikkim. We immediately moved our armies. There was a standoff of 72 days. Chinese side said, you should withdraw your armies. We said, not until you withdraw your equipment. So finally, after China withdrew its construction equipment and its forces, did India also withdraw its forces? There we said, we are ready for negotiations, but on the ground, it will be strong posturing. We will not yield. Friends, look at Galwan Valley incident from that angle. Had we not challenged, maybe they would have sat down in that area for some time and gone back. But now the policy is, no, we won't allow our territory to be nibbled away like that. So we challenged. There was, because our forces could not carry weapons initially, there was scuffles. Now, of course, they are allowed to carry weapons. There was scuffle. There was a big conflict in Galwan Valley in which 20 of our soldiers had sacrificed their lives. An unknown number of soldiers died on Chinese side also. But today we are standing very firm, safeguarding India's territorial interests. So as far as the India's security, border security is concerned, India's territorial interests, which face a challenge from time to time from Chinese side, are concerned, today our position is proactive diplomacy with strong ground positioning, strong ground posturing. That is what is happening in 3 places at Ladakh today. We are safeguarding our soldiers, our army is safeguarding our territory with utmost courage and zeal. We are challenging them. We are engaging with them in a physical manner, trying to push them back. Today negotiations are happening at the army officers level and also at the diplomatic level to ensure that the Chinese go back behind what is the Indian LAC. We are talking to them to achieve that objective. So the change in approach must be noted. We are no longer going to be mute witnesses after 5 agreements, another sixth agreement that also will be violated. That is no longer the policy. But together with that, friends, the other challenge also comes in terms of our economic interests. India and China as neighbors, we live in the same geographical area. We are both fast growing economies. We are energy guzzlers. We are vast economies. Our consumer needs are big. Incidentally, because we are in the same area, Our clients are also same. Our resources are also same. The substance of it is that competition is inherent. Because we both compete for same resources from same countries in the same neighborhood. Our sea lanes are same. There, it is now a major challenge for our two countries, both India and China, to ensure that this growth trajectory of our two countries, many people think that why are you comparing? China is way ahead of us. Yes, because China began some 15 years ahead of us. But we are catching up. We are closing the gap between our two countries. And in about 5 to 10 years' time, we will move much closer to China in terms of our economic growth and prosperity. So in this, there is bound to be a competition. We must ensure that it doesn't turn into any conflict. But since there is a competition, in any competition, you have to be careful about protecting your interests. You should not allow the competitor to step on your toes. Indians have a peculiar habit. Anybody can step on your toes. And what you do, sir, कृपा करके मेरे toes से आपका पैर उठाइए. ये हमारा स्टाइल है. हम उनसे प्रार्थना करेंगे. We request them. That used to be the practice. Today we said no. When you are competing, you also have to jealously safeguard your economic interests. Not that you are against the other person. We wish China well, let them grow in their own way. But in this competition, India cannot be left behind. We are an ambitious nation, we are a potential nation, we have to grow. That's why we decided that just as we have changed our position in a nuanced way on the border when it came to security, we have to change our position in a nuanced way when it came to economic security also. That's why we are today talking more about Atmanirbhar. We are now making serious efforts to reduce our dependence for normal things. I mean, if you want a Tesla car, you can still import. If you want a very deep tech invention, you can still import. Nobody can stop that. Nobody can oppose that. But why should you depend on some other country for very small ordinary things? Do you know, several of you must be wearing jean pants. Jean pant textile is manufactured in India. But we don't manufacture the zippers sufficiently in India. We import zippers from China. We import buttons from China. We import cellulose tape from China. We import wire casing from China. India today, these days, exports almost $250 billion worth of mobiles. This is the volume of our mobile exports. This is the volume of our mobiles market. But 70% of those mobiles are assembled here. Components come from outside. Screen you don't make. Keyboard you don't make. Can't India do these things? We are used to this dependence on other countries, especially on countries like China. What we do is, we supply them the raw material. We get the finished goods from them. We are losers on both ways. Your raw material you are supplying, you are short of raw material. You are getting final goods which you can easily manufacture in your own country. The result was, if there is today, in between our two countries, if there is today $100 billion trade, within this $100 billion trade, our exports to China are hardly 20 billion. are 25 billion. Our imports from China are 75 billion. The trade deficit is 52 billion. It is even better after Prime Minister Modi came. Earlier, it used to be 65 billion. From that, we brought it down by $10 billion. Now, this gap has to be bridged. India has to become self-reliant in many areas. Consumer goods area, manufacturing area, many areas India can stand on its own feet. In that direction also, we are making great efforts. That is what we call as Atmanirbhar. Together with that, we also want to become a big destination for global investments. How did China become today the global market supplier? Today, China is the global market supplier for many products. How did it become? It invited investments into its country, used those foreign investment to boost up its domestic manufacturing capacity. That's why Prime Minister Modi ji, in his Lal Killa speech, talked about it. Make in India. Be vocal for local. Make in India, but make not just for India, make for the world. Make in India, make for the world. So when you are competing with your neighbor, you also have to be in a position of strength to compete. You want to compete, but you import zippers, tablets, everything from that very same country. So that scenario is now changing, friends. So please understand, we are not against this bilateral relationship. We are not enemies of any other country. India never thinks in terms of any enmity. With the worst challenger like Pakistan also, we never look at them as enemies. We have a challenge, we have a problem, we know how to tackle it. But people of those countries, Pakistanis, Chinese, they are not our enemies in that sense. We have an enmity on the border, we have a challenge with their armies. We have to now reorient our entire approach to this relationship under Prime Minister Modi. That is precisely what India is doing. While trying to maintain good relations with this neighbor, we have to, first of all, understand how that neighbor behaves and accordingly respond. We understood and we are responding in an appropriate manner. What will happen is that the new approach of India will lead to definitely greater stability along the line of actual control, greater peace. But also, if it can really convey a strong message to China, who knows, Chinese approach also will change. Until now, because we are accepting, they are behaving in a manner. When you don't accept, maybe they will change. Maybe they will reform themselves. If China reforms its practices, its thinking and its approach, it's going to be beneficial not only to India, not only to the rest of the world, it's going to be beneficial to China also. Thank you.